Daniel Yao is a freshman, Mech-E. He has graciously and excitedly volunteered to introduce Ryan Petersen, who's the founder and CEO for Flexport. Daniel, take it away from Thousand Oaks.
Thanks very much, Professor. So, well, every successful entrepreneur can claim some influence. I think very few have as wide a reach as today's speaker. So Ryan Petersen, who's CEO and founder of Flexport, is using cloud-enabled analytics to reinvent a $1 trillion industry. In 2007, while still an MBA student at Columbia, Petersen started his first major business. ImportGenius.com was a database analyzing public trade records. And after graduating on the Dean's List, he continued Import Genius and documented millions of transactions worldwide. Through his experiences with previous ventures as well, Petersen spotted many outdated commercial practices, which sank billions of dollars in wasted fuel and congestion every year. After 6 years in Import Genius, Petersen started Flexport to streamline the entire freighting process. Flexport's flagship product is their dashboard, the first of its kind to connect producers, carriers, and merchants through a single cloud-enabled platform. The product has acquired some very high-profile clients, including Georgia Pacific and Foxconn, the producer of most iPhones, and Flexport itself is worth $3.2 billion as of its latest funding round. Petersen's work has produced a seismic push in international commerce and will accelerate global trade for years to come. If you want more of Ryan after this seminar, you can find him on Twitter under his handle Types Fast, which, among much else, I hope he explains today.
Thank you for that intro, Daniel. You're a great writer. That was not created by me, so he was surprising me every sentence, but well-formed, nice job. I think I don't have any issue with it, so good job.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Ryan. Welcome. I am trying to, I believe, hopefully you can see your timeline up. Not that life started at Cal, but a lot of our lives, we feel like, are starting at Cal on the one side, all the way over to Flexport. I am so excited to talk to you about your journey, and we have a lot to go through. But before we talk about the journey, if we could talk about where you're ending up right now, and if you could just tell us what Flexport is known for, what it does right now. We know it's a $3.2 billion company, and Daniel just gave us a little bit more about it. Can you just explain it so we kind of have that in the back of our minds as we talk about your journey?
Yeah, and it is a confusing area that we don't think about a lot. It's just like, look around the room wherever you are right now, like, where did all this stuff come from? How did it get here? And the role of Flexport is to connect all the parties in the chain required to move those products from wherever they're made anywhere in the world to wherever they're going to be sold. And we focus on the leg of sort of like from that, well, it tends to be mostly manufactured goods that we're shipping, or raw materials or components of it, rather than oil or other kinds of commodities. But think of things that ship in containers or on pallets, ocean containers or on pallets. And we bring it from those factories into the world's warehouses, get it close to where it needs to be distributed. It sounds boring, but it's also, it sounds somewhat simple, like just put it on a boat, ship it over. But what happens is that for any of these transactions, let's say you want to move a pallet of iPhones from China to somewhere in the world. Well, those goods are going to touch like 15 or more companies are going to be required from door to door. There's not a FedEx or a UPS that can move giant pallet levels. Even when FedEx and UPS do this, they use other people's assets. They're not like, for small parcels, sure, everything's owned by a FedEx truck, FedEx plane, FedEx warehouse. But when you're moving bigger containers or pallets and larger, it's too heavy for the driver to lift up. It goes through a whole different network. And in that network, it's 15 different companies. It's a factory, a warehouse, trucking companies in origin, customs broker, a port, an airport, right? Or an airplane flight across the world, and mirror image on the other side. There's a bank and there's an insurance company, a very complex world. So what Flexport does is build interfaces for all these parties to come together and get the data they need, give us the data we need, and make the transactions really seamless. We're trying to make things better, cheaper, faster. so that, yeah, these companies can grow and not have to think about this part of the world. Like logistics should be just automatic, and you just focus on making your company awesome instead of dealing with paperwork in the shipping department.
So I'm glad you mentioned complexity, and I'm glad you mentioned paperwork. You have a history of really looking at things that are very, very complex. That's one thing. And paperwork, one of the things that you shipped is toilet paper, which was incredibly important during the past 8 or 9 months. So thanks for that. Going back though, in terms of complexity and kind of things that you're interested in, you went to Cal and you're actually an East Coaster. So I'm kind of interested in knowing if you can kind of share what interested you about Cal and why you came here and what you focused on.
Yeah, and I'll get to share my probably most useful piece of advice for you on the call is that someday, all of you Cal grads, when you have children, your children will be looked at as though they were in-state students when they apply to Cal. So I was a beneficiary of this. My dad went to Cal. He tried to discourage me from going to Cal. Actually, he thought it was too big and wanted to see me in a smaller sort of environment. But his role as an alum got me favorable treatment, because if you're an out-of-state student, Cal's very hard to get into. So I sort of put an asterisk next to my Cal acceptance letter. I was alumni, the son of alumni. Yeah, so that's my tip. I forget if the original question though, what was it? It's just like, what is my,
So it's interesting. You came to Cal. What did you decide to study?
I didn't, I just put that off, that decision, for a long time. I think I declared my major as economics in my second senior year. And I just tried to dabble. I probably have more units than anybody. I got over 170 units before I graduated. I think you only need 120 to graduate. So I just dabbled. I did a lot of stuff. And then at the very end, when I realized I needed to graduate, I did sort of the fitness fun. What's the least resistance path to getting out of here? And it turned out to be an economics degree based on the classes I had taken up to that date.
Yeah. The other thing that you notice, if anybody happens to look at your LinkedIn, is that you speak at least 5 languages. And we were talking earlier, and you'd mentioned some of the classes here. I'm not sure if it's still available. Maybe people can answer on the chat. But you want to talk about some of the classes that you took in terms of languages?
Yeah, well, I should do another asterisk. At some point in my life, I had spoken those languages, and but I just I have fun in language class, so I really enjoyed that at Cal. I was always in almost every semester I had at least one language class, but that's just like my personal. I just enjoyed those classes. And yeah, one of my favorite classes at Cal was this class called Portuguese. You have it on the Portuguese for Romance speakers, which is a Romance language. If you speak Spanish or French, you can learn 4 semesters of Portuguese in one semester. And it's actually an easy, for those people, it's relatively easy to cover.
I couldn't find it. I actually looked for it online.
Yeah, it was always I was always surprised more people weren't in it, because if you spoke Spanish, what a great hack you could, and it was a very fun class. You would do plays and stuff.
Yeah.
I just disappeared. Let me switch cameras.
So for those of you, Ryan did just disappear, but I know he'll come back because he's somebody who solves problems.
I'm back.
So the other thing that you did at Cal, you were a sailor. You're from Maryland. Did you start sailing there? I'm always interested because there's something that a lot of entrepreneurs learn from sailing.
Oh, yeah, I did. Well, I'm from Maryland, and I think sailing is kind of common in Maryland. So we used to even go to sailing camp. So Cal, I was not the most active person in extracurriculars or anything like that. I was never in a fraternity or any kind of the scenes at Cal or on any teams. But I did, yeah, join sailing club down at Cal Adventure down there by the marina. And that was pretty fun. I love sailing, but even my big regret was not doing the ski club. I don't know what I was thinking. It seems really fun to go Tahoe.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have any life lessons from those sports in business. I don't know. They're fun. Have fun.
So Ryan, one of the things is that you're always very, very humble about things. Your company has this incredible evaluation. They had incredible, $1 billion of funding from SoftBank. You're able to make these big stories without almost intending to. And you told me a funny story about something that happened to you at Cal that also made you somewhat famous. I was wondering if you could share that story with us.
Yeah, well, so when I was in Cal finally beat Stanford one year. I don't know if that's ever happened in any of your times at Cal, but it had never happened when I was there. We had gone 7 years in a row losing in football to Stanford. And after the game, there was quite a bit of mayhem. And someone gave me a police officer's hat, and I was wearing it. And I just thought it was a fake hat. But and I did an interview with CBS News that went, well, it was on TV, and someone from the administration must have seen it and like emailed every professor in the whole school asking if they know who this person is. And I was like on Cal's most wanted list. I had to call and explain myself, and I didn't steal the cop's hat. I don't know where it came from. I just was wearing it. But yeah, that was probably one of my scary points in life when they were like, why is this going to every professor?
Well, I guess the good news, and that's interesting. It was 2002. So luckily it wasn't now. Maybe it'd be even faster in terms of seeing it. So that's pretty funny. If you, on the timeline I have, you graduated in 2002, kind of getting a little bit more serious. When you graduated, it was a tricky time. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that, because right now we're in a pretty tricky time for those of us who are graduating.
Yeah, well, I graduated in 2002, and then actually I graduated from business school in 2008. So I only know how to graduate during recessions. Oh, yeah. And you all, it's very clarifying for the mind of like, okay, there's not that many choices out there. So it depends on what you want to go into. But I didn't know like what to do, when I was graduating. So I just moved home to live with my parents, which was okay. I think saving money was good. I was fortunate to graduate from undergrad without student debt. Really lucky that my parents had saved up enough to pay for my college. Grad school was much different for me. I graduated with a lot of debt, and it forced me to really make some decisions around how I was going to pay for things. But it's a really difficult time to graduate in a recession when people are not hiring as much. I'm not sure how much is going on right now. Flexport's still hiring like crazy. All the tech companies I know are still hiring. So I suspect people on this audience are probably in a good place with regards to that. But the biggest blessing that I had when graduating from undergrad was not having debt. If you do have debt, a really rough situation to be in, and you got to figure out how to pay it off as fast as you can. And so living with your parents, saving money might be a good idea, or finding other ways, because it's a really life limiting thing is to have debt and have to make choices based on how are you going to make these payments, instead of like, well, what would be the most interesting thing that you could learn the most and have the most creative impact in the world. So it's one of the issues I think is undervalued in our society, is just, and really a big problem for people, and especially hopefully not too many of you in your seats. But if you're in that position, you got to find out how to make some money and get out of it ASAP.
Yeah, actually, that is a huge problem, and it's something that'd be interesting if people in the audience wanted to try to figure out how to solve that. So you did go home, which is actually quite interesting, because I believe both of your parents are fairly entrepreneurial.
Yeah, both my parents are entrepreneurs.
So when you went home, what were you trying? What did you do? What was your path? You're at home trying to figure stuff out.
Well, so actually I went home, saved money, working for my parents, living in my parents' house, working for my older brother. My brother hired me. He had a business buying things in China and importing them into the US. And so I started working for him and just finding ways to make great value, work hard, work fast, try to get stuff done. We never called it a startup. We never raised any venture capital. We were just like people trying to build something, make a business, make some money.
So what did you end up selling?
Make sure that we were like financially well off, so I didn't have to live with my parents, et cetera.
So what did you end up selling with your brother?
The business sold motorcycles, and we had a couple groups: motorcycles, dirt bikes, ATVs was kind of one group, and then one that did fat tractors and backhoes, and then one that did bathroom fixtures. So several different brands under the same distribution company.
So I think I found one that had bathroom fixtures like Wasana or something like that. So you were doing that, and then I think you moved over to China, because I think you were importing a lot of things.
Yep. So I lived with, we did that for a couple of years working for him. I went, I spoke, when I was an undergrad, I lived in South America. I speak Spanish and Portuguese. I saw that we were doing all this business with China. This was the early 2000s, like 2005, or even earlier, actually. 2005 is when I decided to move to China and work on supply chain I went over there to learn Chinese more than anything. And sort of while I was there, was able to help with supply chain for this business and build things for them and keep going. But I was there to learn Chinese. I thought, well, if if anybody could learn Chinese, it's me, because I already speak a couple languages. I mean, that was hubris, but I did learn quite a bit when I was there, and thought that would be a valuable life skill and a great adventure. And yeah, it was. I lived in China for 2 years, studied, at the time I spoke quite well Chinese. These days it's gotten pretty rusty, but yeah, lived in China, learned the culture, did a lot of business, learned a lot about import export, learned about supply chains, learned about what's so broken, and then came back to go to business school.
So a lot of students are curious. They're all, people are thinking like, should they go to school? What should they do to continue? How did you decide to go to business school, and how did you decide to go to Columbia?
I
Or
think
why
I was
did
a little bit lost in life, honestly. I think I had been in China. I wasn't making a lot of money. I wasn't, it was hard to see where exactly I was going to go. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but also saw that I wasn't making much money and didn't see like a path that was obvious for how I was going to do that, other than just learning a lot more, keep learning. And I liked that. I mean, I think I just saw that business school grads make a lot of money, and thought, well, at least I'll have a backup plan, like get a job. Maybe I can learn a lot on the way, get a job. I don't know. See, business schools are pretty interesting, and like they really are thoughtful about curating their class and getting people with really different backgrounds, both demographics, gender. They try hard, but also just like really different backgrounds of like bankers and consultants. And I brought a very different background than other students, of like just being a pure entrepreneur and never having a real job, but speaking some languages and having had to go at it, running a international trading company. So I saw like an angle to get into school, which thought would be a stepping stone for me to get ahead. And yeah, I think it was.
I think that's interesting. You also talked about different languages, and actually, I wanted to ask you one thing about going to Cal. You spoke Portuguese and Spanish, and you also went overseas when you're at Cal as well, right?
Yeah. And I think the EAP is one of the best things I did. Education Abroad program is awesome. I highly recommend it to everyone out there. It's never too late to do it. You can do it even your last semester at Cal and graduate from overseas, but really awesome programs.
I mean, so you did have this incredible rounded background to go into business school. You look like a really interesting candidate, but I have to admit, my understanding is also that you did really well in the GMATs.
I don't know who told you that, but yeah, I had a good GMAT score.
Uh-huh. We won't go into that.
Did some homework.
That might have helped also. Why Columbia?
Columbia had New York City seems like an awesome place to live. I've been living in Shanghai, and I thought there's probably not any other cities out there in the US that would feel, I used to think New York would be too big for me. And then after I lived in Shanghai, I was like, it's not big enough. And then Columbia has like it was kind of just timing. They have a program that starts in January. Everybody else, I was gonna have to wait until August. So I managed to get in, and therefore I graduated a year earlier than if I would have had to wait.
And so when you're at school there, a lot of interesting stuff happened. Can you talk about some of the things in business school that were kind of inflection points for you, or what your choice, what you want to talk about?
Oh, well, I think just even being at business school, I realized that I was really different from the other students, and like a million times more entrepreneurial than the average person there. And wasn't like, I actually have tons of friends from business school. I love them all, and they're awesome people, but they're just not, most of them are not entrepreneurs. And that's not what business school is made to do. It's not really made to train entrepreneurs. Originally it's designed to train managers. And no knock on that at all. But I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be following the track. Like they had these recruiting companies would come to recruit, and I only went if they had free food, which they usually did, but I never was part of I didn't do the interviewing track. I just could tell that and people it's funny because other students were like, oh, you're such a risk taker, you're gonna start a company. But for me, I didn't see it that way. I was like, it would be risky for me to get one of these jobs. Like I wouldn't know how to do the job or be good at it, or, that seems really scary and risky to me. I think it was actually more of a fear thing for me. Like, I don't know how I didn't have that experience to go work in a company and be the, do a job like that. I was just hired out of the business, at least at that time. Now I'd be great at it. But.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of people who've gone to Google and gone to larger companies and then done their startup, but you didn't do that. Interestingly enough, like glutton for punishment, you went back and worked with your brother.
Yeah. we started a business while I was in school, actually, that takes public information on shipping data, digitizes that data, structures it, provides analytics, and sells that to businesses involved in global trade in one way or another, whether they're an importer, an exporter, or a logistics company. Actually, Flexport's a big user of Import Genius data, and others that want to access transaction level records on global trade. So yeah, we started that business while I was in school, grew it to like 50 people or so. It's still actually a great business, still going, awesome people there, still a really great product. Flexport's a big user of that product. So I started that with my brother and another partner named Michael Kenko, three of us.
And you all so basically at that company, what you're doing, you are studying business. You're in business school, incredibly time intensive, but somehow you managed to also start this company with two others, including your brother, and Import Genius. And it basically takes a bill of lading. I think that's how you say it. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, lading. I think it's Viking English for loading.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know where it came from, but that's my guess.
And it gives you information about that. And in that you use technology to kind of read what's going on. You all found some pretty interesting stuff that was happening at that time. In fact, I can't even remember, was it 2008, 2009, something was happening with Apple?
Yeah, so we built a business, and like one of the problems that we had was just getting people to pay attention to us. So we would do a lot of like, there's really interesting data, this public record out there. So we would collect that, try to get attention. I mean, it's a myth that if you build something great, they'll come. We had a product for like 18 months before we got our first users, and the product wasn't and then we went pretty fast once we figured out some growth loops for the business for acquiring users. But it's not just that if you build it, they will come. I think sales is one of the most underrated professions in the world, sales, marketing, getting customers, driving demand. And it's funny because, I bet you if you look at the course catalog for Cal, there's probably not a sales class. Maybe the business school has one that a handful of people take, but the vast majority of people will graduate still believing that sales is like a dirty word. And, your image is like the used car salesman, when actually it's probably like part of every single job on earth is the ability to sell yourself, sell your ideas. And probably 20% of all the actual jobs are just doing sales all day. And if you think of sales the right way, which is understanding customer problems, understanding the capabilities of the organization you work for, finding a match between those and solving the problem, and earning a small piece of it for your own, or hopefully a big piece of it for yourself as you create value for people, then actually sales is like the most beautiful thing in the world. And it's all about just being a great listener, really a good problem solver, understanding what your own, and a competent person, right? With a part of a competent organization. It's awesome, right? So that was kind of my role for the business, was product strategy and sales and go to market, and how do we get people to hear us, use us. As obviously as the leader of a business, you do all the things, but I think that's what I was good at.
I think that's one of the things you're good at. I think what you said, there's something that you said about listening that's incredibly important. I think a lot of engineers are also tagged with being introverts, and maybe they aren't so good at selling, but that is so opposite of what's true. I think that introverts have a built-in superpower in terms of sales because they listen. And so
sales is listening is key, but also just being shameless. A lot of salespeople are like, I don't know how you just the world rejects you so often over and over again. And like, you have to just really deeply believe that you're a good person and that you're awesome. And it's almost psychosis sometimes with like good salespeople, where they're just like, no amount of a customer talking crap to them will change their day. Like, they're just so happy. And
you were telling that story about basically selling and getting stories out there, and what Import Genius was doing. And I was wondering if you'd tell that story, or I don't know how big it was, about Apple.
No, I mean, I'd rather not go into that one. You can
No
read
worries.
about it.
No worries at all. So here you've started Import Genius. You're doing this with your brother. You're doing it with your other co-founder as well. What made you change?
I think there was a couple of things. One is just like this bigger idea that I had and I really wanted to work on, and that I thought it was interesting, that I thought originally we thought we'd do it as part of Import Genius, and we went out to raise some money and saying, hey, we're going to build this other business, but nobody wanted to do that. My partners actually weren't that committed. We were making cash from Import Genius, but they didn't want to reinvest and build some, go and build something new. And sometimes it turns out it's easier to build something from scratch than it is attach it to something that's already going. And I got to that point where I realized if I want to bring it to life, I just had to go and do it. And so once I got the license to do it, I just left. I stepped down from Import Genius. We promoted the woman who runs customer service to be the overall general manager of the company, and she runs it today.
So when you say we got the license to do it, doing the import-export or import business and doing the trade it's an incredible black box. It's so scary that people spend a lot of money in order to have somebody else do it. I think it was super, super complicated. What made you think that you could tackle this? I mean, I think you talk at some point about people, it was a business where people were using fax machines.
I used to say that, and then I got heavily criticized, and our competitor told me they only use fax machines in their Japanese office now. So the world, which I thought was funny, because that tells you the problem is that not all the offices are using the same technology. Yeah, I felt this. Global trade is one of the things that I think has the biggest impact on humanity in the world, that over the last 40, 50 years, we've lifted almost 1 billion people out of poverty, largely through the adoption of free market economics and the ability of really any person on planet Earth to trade with any other person, as long as you are in a country which has been part of a US-led alliance, the Washington Consensus, that as long as you're part of that, you can trade with anybody. And the US Navy guarantees freedom of the seas. And so that any ship can go anywhere and trade. That's not normal. That wasn't like that throughout world history. And what it's led to is billions of people getting lifted out of poverty in China, in India, throughout Southeast Asia, Latin America too. It's been the adoption of relatively the World Trade Organization, like setting standards so that companies know what they're going to pay in duties, that it's clear that the same regs are applied everywhere. That trading system and the shipping container, by the way, technology played a big role. We reduced the price of shipping by 95+%, I think more like 99%. We reduced the back-breaking labor of loading ships. Like, you used to hand carry goods onto these ships, and now it's a container. So a lot of efficiencies. And yet anyone that engaged in this trade, anyone that participated, tried to ship something, you got a customer in another country, try to send them something, would report back like, this is a nightmare. No one knows how much you're going to pay. There's all these shifty middlemen. Nobody knows, like, paperwork is complicated. There's a lot of regulations for good reason, regulating global trade and these transactions. But it was really hard to find someone that would really take your interest, hold your hand through this process and make it possible. So I thought, like, a lot of the companies in the world were cut off from this thing that has, to my view, like, done so much good for the world, and yet is so hard. So, you tend to get only the biggest companies know how to do it compliantly, have the resources and knowledge. And the original idea was, like, could we help the long tail of mom and pops and entrepreneurs and people who are just like, hey, global trade gets a bad name, but if someone that makes a cool product and then finds a customer in another country that wants to buy it from them, like, if you knew the people involved, it would be hard to say that this is a terrible thing happening right here. And so we thought, hey, we can make this much easier for everybody.
How did you get a first customer? And I think you got the customer before I wanted to talk about Y Combinator, but I think you actually got your customer maybe before you were at Y Combinator.
Well, we had people lining up to use it before it was ready to go. I don't really believe in building something if you don't have customers for it. I think that would be a waste of everybody's time. You want to make sure that people have a lot of if this, then statements, if this, then that statements, where you're not going to build the thing unless people are ready to line up to use it. In fact, our biggest obstacle to getting going was government. It's heavily regulated, so we need to get a license from Customs and Border Protection to clear goods through customs. And we had the license, but there was, if you'll remember, in 2013, there was a government shutdown. There was like a furlough, forget why. But the government was shut down for a couple of months, and we were sitting there waiting. It was funny to watch this thing in the news. Like, literally, the person whose job is to activate our license was not getting paid, so they weren't working. But yeah, that was the biggest blocker. Then once that happened, we were able to go. We get customers, one, through personal network, and two, we figured out a model where in the very beginning we could acquire customers online at a good CAC to LTV ratio. So we pay for it.
How do you acquire a customer online?
In the very beginning, it was Google AdWords. That's not our business model today, but we can, if we want to, we can acquire customers on AdWords.
So when you use those Google AdWords, did you go back to the learning that you had from working with your brother when you all were doing stuff after, before you went to business school?
Oh, of course. I mean, everything's a journey of learning all the way. And part of what gave me confidence that I could do something was that I've done it. I know how to build a business. And the biggest learning I had was getting out of debt and getting to a world where you can live without other people's permission. And so we knew that we would be successful because with Import Genius, but also with Flexport, because it's just like gonna run the business in such a way that it could never possibly die. Like, we're not going to burn more money than we have. We're going to make money along the way. And although we've raised a ton of capital, $1.353 billion, we never asked. I mean, yeah, along the way we did have to ask for some money, but for a long time we're like, oh, we're not asking for money. Like, people could tell that it was going to work with or without them. And then the paradox is then investors would want to invest because they saw that the ship's going to sail.
Why did you decide to apply to Y Combinator?
For learning, and my number one value in life has always been learning. I mean, I've changed that a little bit. I had a daughter recently, so I try to put love first, but learning has been my number one value. And I was moving to the Bay Area. I don't think you need to do Y Combinator if you live in the Bay Area for a long time and spend time in tech scene. Like, you'll have a network, you'll have friends and people to learn from. But I was coming from out of town. I hadn't lived here since college, 15 years prior. Mm-hmm. And so my college friends, none of them work in technology. So I wanted to learn and be networked and connection. And then also I can do sales, but I like to do inbound sales where people come to me and talk to me about my product rather than cold calling and outbound. I mean, I think fundraising is a form of sales. So Y Combinator kind of changes that a little bit, where investors are lining up to talk to you instead of you having to like go beg them for money, which never suited my personality.
I was watching that video with Paul Graham and Sam Altman, and you're on there. They kind of, I guess it was Friday afternoons, they kind of do a broadcast Q&A with a couple of different founders.
Yeah, that was the startup school, which y'all should try to attend if you can. Well, I guess they're not. They probably do it online now. Yeah.
I imagine it is online. You had a lot of support from both of them. It seemed like, at least in that conversation when you all were exchanging and you're trying to explain how it was going to work. What kind of support did you actually get from them, and how was that helpful to you, or not?
Well, both Paul and Sam have been big supporters of Flexport. Both have invested in. I guess Paul didn't invest personally. Sam invested in Flexport. But Paul's been one of our biggest fans ever. Big supporters. He'll email people for me if I ask, which people open emails and respond when Paul Graham emails them. He's written about us. He said, giving comments for things. He's told investors to invest in us. I consider him a great friend. I'm sad that he lives so far away in England now, because I'd like to see him more again.
So interesting. As you were starting to grow, you got some funding when you came out of Y Combinator. What happens when you leave Y Combinator? What happens when you graduate?
Well, Y Combinator, remember, is only a Tuesday night dinners thing. You're barely there. I mean, I was running the business the whole time. And I didn't see myself as like, you graduate, cool, I don't have to go to Tuesday night dinners anymore. I'm just going to work on Tuesday nights. It's for founders who are building companies, right? So it's not like they build your company for you or do the thing. It's, if anything, you go there to learn and meet some people and stuff, but you're building your company on your own. As you were doing your idea, did you ever pivot? No, not really. We keep learning new things and extending the vision, but at its core, like Flexport still does what we said. I wrote a business plan, 2 pages in 2008, and it's pretty much what we do. One of the students had a very interesting question, and that was like, how do ideas come up at Flexport? Who do the ideas come from? New idea. Well, anyone can come up with an idea, and there's all kinds of ideas. So you can have an idea about a problem, and we use a decision-making framework called RAPID, where R is it's a mnemonic device to remember who does what's your role in a decision when a decision needs to get made. Anyone can be an R, an R is a recommender. And so if you have an idea, you can recommend it. It could be about anything. It could be about like, we want to improve something, or we're wasting money. I love those ones, but, or it can be some grand idea for a bigger thing. You can just do that in your weekly team meeting. There's a template, a Google Doc that we run, and you just post, anyone has the ability to post an R or post an idea there, an opportunity. And then the team, and they get quick feedback about it from the other people on that team, and they can escalate it and bring it up if they think if the leaders of that team thinks it's important. And then we also have an annual planning cycle. So once a year, there's a big one. And people put forth big rock ideas. Here's something I want to do that I think companies should do, that should make a big initiative. And we'll go through, I think we had maybe close to 100 of them proposed this year, and we can't fund them all, fund a handful. And then every team can see all those ideas and grab ones that apply to their space. And if they have budget, they're welcome to pursue it. But top-down budget is sort of once a year. And then quarterly, we review progress on all these teams' roadmaps, where they say, here's what we're doing. And anyone on that team can influence the roadmap by putting forth their ideas and drive it. So I think documentation is a big part of it, like really documenting the process, trying to create some fairness, some standards where ideas get put, so people don't feel like, hey, I'm screaming over here, but the organization is not listening. Organization's a bit of a fiction. It's just a group of people. And so we have to create mechanisms for these ideas to surface and get recognition and rally people, because the people are the ones that are going to do it. There's no company to do it. It's a group of people who have to love the idea and commit and go make it happen.
You are often, people who work for you tout your leadership skills, and you've had some really interesting hires. How do you hire people? And actually, how many people are you now managing? How many people are part of Flexport now?
There's about 1,800 Flexporters now. I personally manage 6 of them. 7, I have an executive assistant too. So thankfully, I don't have to manage all 1,800. So
when you were building things up, hiring, and now you're still hiring people though, what do you look for?
I look for 4 or 5 things. Number one, and this is not just when I'm hiring, I look for this in our culture and our people, and what are we, who are we as a people and as a company. And number one is purpose, a sense of like vision and purpose and why we're doing this, full of potential, hopefully some play, like let's do this and be problem solvers. So a sense of purpose. I try to build trust, or see that I'm going to trust the person, integrity, and people doing the things they say they're going to do. Some people are just very good at building teams and establishing trust. I found the best way to get people to trust you is to be vulnerable and tell someone that. This is actually a great life lesson I didn't get early enough, is that if you admit the worst thing about yourself to someone, they'll actually like you more. Which is like, we spend all our times hiding from these problems and pretending they don't exist. And if anyone knew about this thing about me, they would think I was a terrible person. But actually, if you just told someone, they would like you more. Crazy. So how do we get people to be vulnerable, build trust? Some people are just good at this, and those people are really valuable for building a team. I look for people who make good decisions, use their intuition, use data, but can balance data with intuition. People who can dive deep and really, that's part of making good decisions, is knowing the domain and not just like cursory floating above and being an expert that knows everything, but that can't go deep. I look a lot for curiosity, intellectual curiosity. People who are just lifelong learners. I like people who like to read books and are just obsessed with learning new things. Those are probably the biggest thing. Oh, and people are good at prioritizing, providing focus, direction, getting stuff done.
You have, it seems like almost a motto about prioritizing.
Well, I just used to be so bad at it. Flexport used to be so bad at it for so long that it's kind of like top of mind, and your most recent problem is the one that comes up the most. But I think it's super important to prioritize, and that hasn't always been true at Flexport. I used to think we just want to be a collection of awesome people who are empowered to work on what they want and go do it. And I didn't see the need to centralize the decision making about who's working on what very much. And I've learned over time that as you get bigger, that just becomes chaos and it creates bureaucracy. I thought that the process prioritization methods, like some of those things that companies do, to me, as someone who's not worked in a big company before, I thought that was bureaucracy. But actually, as you get to be big and you don't have those processes, that's bureaucracy more often. That it comes from a lack of clarity and process and prioritization, and people just like can't get stuff done. So lightweight process really helps people go faster. And and feel more empowered.
Somehow in all of your work, you prioritize reading, and you're talking about how important books are to you. One of the books that you mentioned to me was Charles Munger's book. Would you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Great.
well, you know, the easiest way to make people think you're smart is to just talk about all the books you read, but I don't want to overdo that. But I was lucky that I think I made it all the way through high school without reading a single book. I was like kind of a bad student. But not like, you know, maybe Cliff Notes was my friend. When I was like 25, I was living in China, felt like a little down on my life. I wasn't sure what I was doing, why I was there. I remember looking around a nightclub and like being the only, or there not being any Chinese people in this nightclub. It was all Europeans and Americans. I'm like, why did I come here? What am I doing in this Shanghai night? You know, it could be any city on planet Earth right now. And realized I'd gone a little bit astray and didn't know what I was doing in life. And I discovered a couple of books that really helped me dig out. My dad gave me Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within, which if you're ever feeling down, start there. Great book, really great exercises, and did some set my values, setting some life goals, like really, I think some powerful stuff that I still revisit every few years if I can. And then another book that was really transformational for me was a book called Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is not a cheap book. I think it's like $100 on Amazon. But I don't even know where I got a copy of this book. Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's business partner, and he espouses, you can find his YouTube, and it's on Y Combinator's site too. If you Google worldly wisdom, Charlie Munger, you should find his USC address on YouTube. I guess he gave the commencement speech there once, and then another article, an essay that he wrote. And the essay and the talk are about worldly wisdom, and it's the idea, the concept of that you can actually learn all the big ideas. That there's probably 100. I don't know if he quantifies it, but there's a limited number of disciplines in the world. So you call them majors at school, but there's a limited number of departments or majors, or however we're going to fragment the thing down. And in each one of them, there's like 2 or 3 ideas that carry, he calls it 80% of the freight. That if you know these 2 concepts, you'll more or less get it. You know, in geology, it's probably like plate tectonics, and then something around planet formation, like where the rocks come from.
Yeah.
And if you know those 2 things, and the erosion from the rain, you know, a couple things, like you'll pretty much understand the core principles of geology. I'm sure I'm offending geologists, and that's the point, because you could go and do this for every discipline, and have enough to be conversant with those people, make your life more interesting. You'll see patterns more. You'll have more mental models and analogies to draw from to understand a situation than you otherwise would. And it's a more fun way to live. And it's not how school's taught. School's taught to just go increasingly deep into one subject and become, you know, you go and get a PhD in any discipline, and you're not going to become more broad even within that discipline. You're going to become more narrow and understand, you know, if you're a history PhD, you're going to zoom in on 1 year in one place. You're not going to study the whole story of civilization and mankind from the apes to the present, from the primates to the present. So it's Munger set me off on that idea when I was like 25, and I spent 15 years trying to learn all the things, and it's been really rewarding for me. And I think it's something that has, I find it fun. It's not like I do that to make money, but ironically, that's how you do make money in life, is like not trying to make money, but trying to earn it, trying to be good. I don't know.
So interestingly enough, books and not trying to earn it. My understanding, so SoftBank invested 1 billion, excuse me, I can hardly even say the number, with others, but they led an investment round for Flexport. And I thought that I read a story about you and the head of SoftBank and a book. Is there a connection there?
And a book?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I don't know about that.
I thought you'd read something that he had written, and you were using certain words.
Oh, well, he has an amazing PowerPoint deck. You should also look that up. Of the all of his PowerPoint decks are just awesome. But Masa has a great deck on the 300-year vision.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, anybody who makes a 300-year vision for their company is like, galaxy brain. That's so cool.
Didn't you did do something similar for Flexport?
I know a 300-year vision people would call me crazy, but it'd be cool.
well, maybe crazy good, but
I don't know if it'd be that useful. It's cool. It's inspiring, but we have so many problems for the next year. People would tell me I'm wasting my time.
So this year has been a crazy year, and you all seem to thrive in adversity. But there's something really wonderful that you all did this year. And actually, I should show some pictures, and I wanted to see if you could talk about that a little bit. And it has to do with PPE. Let me see if I can share this picture.
Yeah, totally. Well, PPE is the acronym everybody knows, hopefully by now, but unfortunately by now, it's personal protective equipment, masks and gowns and gloves and masks and things, and face masks.
There you are in front of all your freight.
Oh yeah. And what we did, yeah, these are boxes of PPE that we shipped. One thing that's happened here, so with COVID, with the lack of PPE on the front line, first of all, I think it's a criminal as a civilization that we've done this to the hospital workers. It's also nobody's real fault. I mean, you had a 20x surge in demand for this stuff, and like, there's no way that people keep 20x inventory for anything. So we probably can learn, and we definitely can do a lot better. But I'm not surprised it happened. But we wake up one day and see this, and it's like just unacceptable, for our front, bordering on civilizational collapse. If the nurses and doctors don't show up for work in the middle of a pandemic, you definitely, society can break down. And so I saw this, I was very scared. And one of the problems that we realized is, like, actually there's a lot of PPE being produced that wasn't able to get to market. People didn't know how to get it.
Personal protective equipment, just in case.
Yeah, personal protective equipment that people didn't know how to get into the country, and we have those capabilities just to help people who were already doing this. But maybe a lot of first timers, a lot of foundations, a lot of philanthropists, a lot of hospitals. When the supply chain broke down, hospitals wanted to go and get the stuff themselves and not wait for these distributors. And they, in many cases, had done so, or they'd found a benefactor who had done it. A lot of resources came together, but it was a worldwide land grab to get the stuff and get it in. And one of the problems is that 50% of the world's freight flies in the belly of passenger planes, and those passenger planes were not flying because of the pandemic. So you just had this severely constrained supply chain with all this stuff, 20 times normal demand trying to flow through 50% of normal pipe. And so we saw that problem and went to work. One of the things that we did that I'm very proud of our team was we leased those passenger planes. We leased 75 of them, 75 flights, and filled the cargo hold where the baggage usually goes. The seats, you saw that. The overhead compartments are also full.
Share it one more time.
To get PPE flowing. We shipped so far already 400 million units of PPE to frontline hospital healthcare workers on 5 different continents. So it was not just a US thing. We worked on with governments all over the world to help them as well. NHS and the Dutch government had a good partnership there, but really all over the world. I feel really proud of our team. I don't want to brag either, because it's definitely not enough. And it's one of those things where it's like, hey, we have a lot of work to do. And vaccine shipping is probably coming up too. And definitely we want to be as useful as we can, but also recognizing it's going to be a big challenge. Those things are refrigerated where masks are not. So it's going to be, you can't put them in the seats of passenger planes.
That'll be incredible to watch how you all can support that. And it's kind of wonderful to hear kind of the journey, and then how you all are doing good. And I know you have some thoughts, but I think we have so many questions coming in that I think I'm going to start to take some questions, and
cool.
then we can close up in about.
You're going to moderate those, right? Rather than me looking at the chat, where do I see
Yeah,
those?
absolutely. In fact,
cool.
I think Swetha and Rishi are going to bring some people in to ask those questions.
Yep.
Well, maybe, I don't know if Callum's going to come in, but I guess you see that you already have an invitation from the ski club to come and talk.
Oh, is that right? Cool. I'd rather go skiing. I'd rather go skiing with you.
Sorry, I think it is a sponsorship. Maybe it's not actually talking.
You want to sponsor the ski club? Yeah. I'll buy you a keg.
Oh no, actually, and Thomas has a question. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that so quickly. Just want to make sure they heard. He'll buy a keg.
As long as you're over 21.
There you go. If you don't mind, would you introduce yourself and then ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, Ryan. I'm a junior here at Cal, studying data science, and been loving what you've been saying so far. And I just had a question, because I came across Flexport about a year ago, and been always kind of see the articles on Crunchbase. and I came across one where I was reading that Flexport acquired a Boeing 747. And I was just wondering, is, a Boeing 747 obviously has, high maintenance costs, etc., operating costs. What is Flexport's kind of strategy or plan going forward to move into actually handling cargo? And if so, kind of what are the advantages you see in handling the cargo yourself?
Yeah, totally. To be clear, we haven't acquired 747. We leased it. And what we've done, we actually have two now. What we've done is sign, they're basically base load volume. So once you're shipping enough volume on a trade lane, at some point you consistently can fill the plane. And so sign it, all you're doing basically is agreeing to 3 flights a week at a contracted price. And there's a bit of a trading aspect here where you're taking some market risk. Like if we've done very well with it this year, air freight prices have gone up so much, you make money. But if air freight prices have gone down, we've already pre-committed to paying for the flights. And so we could lose money there too. In general, we'd like to be asset light. No assets is ideal. What we found is, so at our growth rate right now, I forget the exact stats. I used to know these by heart because I used to have to defend this decision more often when I was fundraising and stuff. But we're flying so much cargo that in order for us to maintain our growth rate, we would have to find like 300 747 flights for next year. Somehow or other, if I want to double my business, if that's how many I'm doing and I want to double, I got to find that many more empty planes for next year. And the only way for us to get access to that kind of capacity in the market was to go and use the balance sheet and say, hey, we'll commit. We're going to buy those whether or not we fill them. And then that was sort of needed to grow the business. But you'd rather not do that. You'd rather partner more deeply with airlines and have them give you capacity whenever it's available. And then, figure out. But as long as you're growing really fast, you sort of need to be able to make commitments to support your customers so that when they sign up, there's space. What you could do though is like anytime I win a customer away from a competitor, by definition, I've created space in the market. They were shipping with someone else before. So if it was a perfectly liquid market, I would just go buy that exact same space back. But the reality is that other competitor of ours has contracted that space probably. And so I've got to, once I find space on our plane, once I have space on our plane for the customer, I'm going to look for other, theoretically, there's space out there in the market that I could put that cargo back into. So I don't have to keep leasing planes as you add more scale. But yeah, our goal is not to run planes whenever we can avoid it.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Great question. Thanks, Thomas.
Great. I think we have Santiago next.
Hi, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. Oh, also, thank you very much for this talk. There's definitely a lot of stuff that I could personally relate to from the things you said. And my question is just a lot more simple, but how do you go about finding investors and like acquiring funding for your startup?
Yeah. In general, I'm sort of anti. No, it's not that I'm anti-investor. Actually, I think investors have been incredibly awesome and they're great people. But it's the same paradox of like, if you want money, you're less likely to get money than if you kind of pretend that you don't, or like convince yourself that you don't, and then say, well, where does money go to? Who gets the money in the world? And in modern world, money tends to flow. Certainly, I'm not going to argue the world's perfectly fair, but there is a sense of karma out there, and people on the average get what they deserve around the edges, mostly. And the other stuff is not fair anyway, so you can't control it that much. So focus on what kind of people get money in the world, and that's people who create value for others as a general rule. So if you could focus on creating maximum value, and then assume that things will kind of work out over the long run in your direction. So from getting a startup funding perspective, my first question is, how do I get myself out of debt so I don't need money that bad right now? Maybe it's getting a part-time job. That's what I did, paying down, making sure I could at least make the payments and get flexibility to do the startup, and then build my business and build my life in a way that was sustainable. So I didn't need anyone's money, and we were going to succeed with or without their money. And then ironically, paradoxically, people would see that and go, I want to give this guy a lot of money. He's not even asking and he's doing well. And I think kind of the same is true of like, if you just want to get money in life, like people don't give money to greedy people. They give money to people that help them with something, right? And so it's the same lesson I give to our salespeople. It's like, yeah, I know a lot of you want to make money, and that's why you get into sales, but you'll make more money if you forget about that and just think about solving your customer's problem than you ever will trying to make money. And so it's not what people want to hear, because a lot of people that have a startup will use it at investors as their excuse for why they're not doing their startup. It's like, oh, I would do it if I just got funding. And that is kind of loser behavior. You're much better off if you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way to do it. And I'll do it on the side as I have a day job. I'll do consulting. I'll teach. I was doing a bunch of stuff like that. And then investors can kind of smell that on you and do it. The other way to get money is do Y Combinator. Try to build hype around yourself as the hottest thing in Y Combinator. I don't know. I'm sure there's some playbooks for going to raise money and get hype for your business, but they tend to be get rich quick schemes that are less likely to work than just like deserving the money because you're a cockroach that no one will ever stomp out of life and feel like you're going to make it one way or the other.
You know, Ryan, we just heard from Cockroach Labs, who are doing very well.
I'm sure that's where that comes from. Yeah. Unstoppable people.
One thing that you just said, I think, was pretty important also. You're not transactional. It's not just about getting money. You're actually creating relationships with people. And I think that once people think that you're just transactional because you're trying to get money, there's something that's a real turnoff, I think, about that.
If you want to meet somebody and you want to get somebody's attention, which is as useful for sales as it is for raising funds, is just have 3 people who know that person email them in the same week, and they'll take the meeting. That's kind of hard to do, but the more at my level, that's not that hard anymore, because it's a very networked world, and success does compound. And
if somebody wanted to network with you, Ryan, what would you recommend? What was the best way to approach you?
Well, I'm impossible right now. I just had a baby 6 weeks ago, and I'm barely staying alive at Flexport, so I wouldn't start there. But in general, yeah, that's one of the tough things for younger people to realize, younger in your career, is that success kind of compounds and your network will grow. You're going to each as you develop more friendships and more success, successful people want to network with and hang out with other successful people. And so it's natural. I mean, when I was in your seat, nobody would take my meeting. I mean, I didn't even know there was such a value to meeting people, but be the kind of person that deserves that, and be interesting and meet people and network, and but network not in the sense of like wanting things for yourself, but try to help others. That's what's awesome about Silicon Valley and what sets tech companies apart culturally, is that people are out here trying to help each other and pay it forward. And it's really, as you do, if let's say you do get a job in a tech company, try to find someone who's got your job at another competitor, not a competitor per se, but another tech company. And in fact, that's what benefits tech companies. We don't compete with each other, so we can share lessons. So if you're going, Thomas, who was studying data science, like whatever company you end up joining, let's say you do, find another awesome company and meet data scientists from there and learn from them. And they'll be happy to teach you what they do differently, just because that's like the spirit out here. And because we don't compete with each other. If you're in a traditional industry and your CEO says, hey, go learn from your peers, it's like, well, they don't want to help each other. They're arch rivals. But we're not in tech, like, because tech is a fiction. It's just an overlay across all the other industries rather than it being its own industry. You can use technology for anything.
That's great. Thank you very much, Santiago. That was great.
Yeah, thanks.
Richie, I think.
Are you in a dorm, Santiago? Where is this?
No, I'm actually at home in Palm Springs, California.
Cool. Well, thanks for dialing in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rishi,
Great,
you're
I guess-
asking Santiago. I mean, excuse me, for Sebastian.
Yeah, so I guess with Sebastian's question, essentially he was kind of asking about like ideas related to just like using low latency or just like any other possible innovations within the sort of shipping space, especially thinking about like post-COVID. I mean, what do you kind of think about opportunities there?
Well, wait, what did you say right after low latency?
I was just like kind of generally with like opportunities, in like sort of the shipping logistics space, and like how this industry is kind of changing post-COVID. I mean, where do you kind of see more opportunities?
It's too early for me to project on COVID. I mean, the one thing is that I think everyone in the world can agree we can stop listening to experts now. They're just wrong about everything, and like they just think they're so smart, but they don't know. There's so many economists, so many. Oh my goodness, and not one of them predicted. Right now, global trade's up 10 to 15% year over year. Zero economists predicted this. Zero on planet Earth. That if you make 20% of people unemployed, you shut down the economy, that the volume of merchandise will go up. Like, no, I never saw it. If it's out there, please introduce me to this person. And even them, they're probably, stop clock is right twice a day, right? So one thing is, okay, let's stop pretending we know about what's going to happen. And then therefore, okay, that doesn't mean we sit here and sit on our hands and go give up and we're helpless. It's like, let's build our organizations in a way that no matter what happens, we're going to be successful and that we're super ready to learn from the environment, take in that information, make good decisions, have a sense of purpose so we don't lose track of the long term where we're trying to go, and then enough focus to get over, to get through whatever problems the world throws at us. So that's the first thing as far as COVID is concerned, what it means for organizations and society. I mean, look, last week, the polls, like not one where the experts just don't know, like stop listening to them. At some point that message will ring through. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to learn about the world, but just like have some humility when you make projections. Who knows? For supply chain, I think one of the most interesting thing that is happening. This is like here to stay. I think is customers want more from the world. Like the internet has empowered humans to get things what they want. You have more choice than ever. You can get any product you want probably delivered at your house, by tomorrow afternoon almost. If you're in a major city, and like within 1 hour is where things are going for most common products. And so that's a total different rewiring of supply chains. Like if anyone's thinking about a light switch, like flip that switch and you're doing something remarkable. You're controlling a power plant. It's like literally it's getting a tiny bit hotter. If it's a coal plant, which it probably is, it's getting a tiny bit hotter in real time to give you that electricity. It's one of the most complex systems on earth is the electrical grid. And we take it for granted that it's just so responsive to everyone's needs. And our supply chains and our e-commerce, when you order something, it's not like that. It's like a bunch of people emailing spreadsheets and duct tape and making phone calls and stuff. And so the world does want that. And it needs that in order for companies to be responsive to the end user, when you order something and make sure that inventory is in stock, close enough to you to get to you tomorrow. That's a hard problem. And it's one that's like really made for machines to solve rather than human beings with spreadsheets and email. So that's, I think, the trend that I would feel confident predicting is going to keep, just because from psychology what customers are going to want, and that's not really going to change. You want it fast, you want it cheap, you want lots of options. So I think, the supply chains, COVID has nothing to do with that though. I mean, COVID's going to come and go, and but people are still going to want those things.
That's great. Raylan, I think you're up next for a question. Are you with us? And if not, yep, there we go.
Hi. Yes, I am. Hello, my name is Raylan. Thank you for coming to speak with us today. I'm a prospective student as well, interested in the MBA and also entrepreneurship. I was wondering, as an entrepreneur, how did you optimize your time in the business school for your entrepreneurial ideas?
Yeah, cool. In business school, I got in, there was a couple of entrepreneurship classes. I went to Columbia, not Cal. So I don't know much about Cal's business school, but I'm sure there's some good entrepreneurship programs. Cal's probably better, actually. We're in the Bay Area where all the startups are in tech. So just get into those programs, figure out, meet people, attend things, do extracurriculars, learn a lot, read a lot. I knew I was going to start a company pretty soon after I got there. Not when I applied necessarily, but pretty soon after I got there, I realized, like I was saying before, that I felt a little different and out of place. But therefore it kind of doubled me down on like, okay, if I'm going to be here, the only reason to be here, if you're going to start a company, is that you're going to learn like crazy. And take school really seriously and go be an A student. I got better grades in grad school than I did in undergrad. And took it more seriously. I was more passionate about it. And there's this myth, like, I don't think MBAs on average are good at starting businesses, but that's not because of the business school. That's just like typically the kind of people who go to business school are not doing it to go start a company. They're doing it to learn and to get a resume credential to get into the right job that they want at a company they want. But that doesn't mean that business school doesn't help you starting a company. I think that if you spent, business school has helped me tremendously in starting all my companies. But the sample bias is like MBAs are not necessarily great at starting companies, but if you spent 2 years doing nothing but learn about business, I promise you'll be better at starting a business than if you didn't do that. So.
Did you meet anybody at business school who you then worked with?
Well, yeah, my COO, my business partner for Flexport, I hired. It was my business school friend. So yeah, make friends with all the super smart people that look like they're going places, and think about, stay in touch with them, stay friends with them. And I was able to hire him 6-7 years after business school to come and work with me and be my partner. So yeah, friendships is like the most important thing. Same with Cal. Like you won't remember your professor. Sorry about that. But you'll remember your friends. And you'll be able to help each other. And so your friend group, curate your friends, learn from them, make sure they're people that inspire you. Don't get rid of losers. You don't owe them anything. If they're dragging you down, like, it's fine. Like you don't have to stay in touch with people who are a drain.
Yeah, you may not remember your professors, but often you'll remember an impactful speaker, by the way.
Perhaps.
Thanks, Raylan. Cameron, you had a great question.
Hey, Ryan, super interesting speech, and thanks for coming here. I'm sure you're super busy with your new family additions. I'm curious how it's been to be a non-tech major running a super tech intense company.
Yeah.
And if you could talk about your insights.
It's pretty tough. I think just got to be committed to learning, and like, I see myself as more of a generalist in life than any given discipline. I have got a couple of degrees, but that doesn't define me. And most of the things that I know in life, I learned from books and, not necessarily from a university classroom setting. So I just take it on myself to learn as much as I possibly can. I kind of call myself like the Reno of startup founders. Like the Reno is the biggest little city in the world. And I'm kind of like the least technical founder, or the most technical, non-technical founder. I don't know. So I try to be like as fluent as I can in these areas. Make sure I'm learning from people, make sure I hire people better than me. But the reality is technical founders also have a super hard time doing the other things, going to find customers, attracting talent, raising money, doing the sales, doing the people side of the equation. So there's no one discipline that yields to great business outcomes or great, even building great companies. It's not that tech has a monopoly on that. You got to be really well-rounded and know all the things. And that's why being an entrepreneur, like, it's an amazing way to learn. So I had to learn a lot of tech skills along the way to build businesses and surround myself with awesome people. But it's definitely a challenge because my network wasn't as strong for hiring technologists, and it's taken me longer to get the right team assembled to build world-class tech. And I think, people, I'm not like Patrick Collison where I got to work for that guy. He's like a genius engineer who has a great brand in that world. I'm much more as like, hey, we're going to build an amazing company organization together and build, but it's not, you're not coming to learn technology from me. It's more about company building skills, entrepreneurship, impact, global impact, et cetera. But it's the main thing. Go ahead.
Is there a particular anecdote that you can think of where that sort of maybe outsider or like crossover perspective has played a role?
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have built Flexport if you were a pure technical founder. It couldn't have been done. And a pure technical founder would have refused to make the decisions we made to get to where we are because we used a lot of humans to get to scale. And there were people like V1, when we were in Combinator, like we were using Trello to manage shipments, but we had customers and customers were on board and they were happy with us. And we kept building tech and we got ourselves permission. But if you'd been like, oh, it has to be a fully automated system or we won't do it, then you wouldn't have we would have just never gotten started. And that's why we don't have any competition, because technologists look at the problem and go, oh, there's humans involved here, I can't do it. And we were like, well, no, we're not here to build tech. We're here to solve problems. And we're here to build, solve a big problem that we see in the world, which is trade is too hard. And like, maybe it's not the tech that's the problem. I think it is, like a lot of it is tech, but there's human problems too that need to be solved. And so we see our problem as our opportunity is solving these problems rather than like, oh, we're just here to build tech. I think oddly, I think we build better tech as a result of it, because we're here solving our problem every day, talking to customers, looking at them in the face with their problems and going, hey, where can tech solve this problem for you? Whereas if you're not solving the problem, you don't even get permission to have those conversations. You're still in the room with your friends, like whiteboarding beautiful technological solutions instead of like out there in the world solving the problem and then getting permission to understand the customer's needs and build the right tech. But I'm not claiming that like, oh, this is the only way, or that we've done it perfectly, or that it wasn't. Like if I had a better understanding of database technologies and data modeling, and we would have avoided some fundamental problems in our data model, and we would have less tech debt today. I think if I would have realized more of what was going on in the tech stack along the way, I would have probably made some, guided the company slightly differently. So yeah, sure. I definitely have suffered from that weakness, but surround yourself with better people. And that was the real problem, not my own personal offsite.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Ryan. I think we're going to have Arya ask the last question.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. So I think you have a very inspiring story. And like, my question is, what are some challenges no one told you about when starting a business or just entrepreneurship in general?
Well, stuff that I've learned along the way that I think it doesn't get much easier would be one thing that's surprising. You think like, oh, we're successful, therefore it should get easier. I think it just keeps getting harder all the time. That is a lesson that more people should hear, is like it's going to be really hard and get harder. So you have to really like it. You have to be really like, I'm in it for the right reason. If you're just in it for money, you probably give up and realize there's an easier way to make money. Or if you're just in it for glory, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons to do something in life, and making sure that you have the right reasons so that you'll stick it out. It's good advice. I think, yeah, that's probably good enough. I don't know. There's so many things I learned along the way. It's incredibly rewarding, starting a company, but because I like to learn and learn about every aspect of the human experience, but you have to have the right reasons, or else there's way better ways to make money or do almost anything else than start a company. You're signing up to really, really suffer a lot. It's emotional, a lot of anxiety, you're in public, people stop realizing that you're a human being and start like, we have 1,800 people, and even internally, I don't know everybody anymore. And so I'm sure for a lot of them, I'm like this figurehead that's not a real person, and people will hang on. Like if they only have one interaction with me, that interaction becomes who I am as a person. So you have to be really careful. And that's tough for me, because I only started Flexport under the condition that I would be myself and not let that change. But that's become harder and harder, because who I am is I try to be authentic and share my thoughts in my mind. But like, if that's the only thing that you know about me is that one thing I said, you might paint a very skewed picture because it's one thing I said rather than the full, who I am as a person. So that's a kind of, I'm not complaining, and like, it just comes with the territory. We've been really successful, and that comes with it. But knowing that going in is probably valuable. Like, okay, be yourself, make sure you commit to that. But because if you're just being fake at work, it's not worth it, and you'll be miserable, and then you'll have to quit.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. What's that nice background?
This is LA. It's like
oh, that's LA, huh?
Yeah. I gotta represent the city, man.
All right. It only snows like that once in a while.
Brian, I think that what you said about being authentic is just a nice way for us to wrap up, believe it or not. You're welcome to add anything, but you have really shared with us this incredible journey, and you've done incredible stuff, but you are very humble and you're very authentic, and kind of sharing the raw and the not raw. I did say that you had a good sense of humor, and I'm afraid it hasn't come out yet, unless you want to tell a joke. But I wanted to thank you so much. this is one important learning about Ryan for everybody who's on the call. When we started, he said, well, how are we going to start and how are we going to end? And I think knowing that and how you want to start and how you want to close is incredibly important. And it may seem like a small thing to you, Ryan, but no other speaker has ever asked me about that before. And I think it's very important. And I think it makes you authentic, planful, humble, and just a joy to have had. So thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and share our password. And I'm going to share the password in a few minutes. I'm going to turn off our, I'm going to try to share the password. I'm going to also turn off our recording because I know that Daniel has another question. But I just wanted to, like, with everybody who's on the panel right now, kind of give you a round of applause. Can I ask you all to help me do that since I'm not using my audio?
Oh, and you spelled my last name right. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, there's Petersen and Petersen. Can you tell us what the difference is, where you come from?
Yeah, well, both of them are commoner names. It means that you were a commoner who did not have a last name at the time of the Napoleonic Wars, and they gave you your father's name and then added son to the end. Your father's name became your last name. If you were on the Danish side of the border, you were Petersen with an S-E-N, and if you were on the Swedish side of the border, you became S-O-N.
Go Danes.
Wow.
Thank you
Go
very, very
peasants.
much. I'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and leave this on, but I'm going to turn off our recording. I'm conscious of time. It is 6:27. Can you be with us for 3 minutes? I know we're taking time away from your wife and your daughter.
Likewise. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I should go check in on the fam.
Fantastic. We'll let you go ahead and do that. I thank you. You go ahead and go off. I'll see if we have any more questions from the students. And it's been a pleasure, Ryan.
Okay. Likewise. Thanks, everybody. Go Bears.
Take care. So I stopped the video. I know that we still have 1 or 2 questions, but I hope everybody can see the password. If you have questions and you'd like me to submit them to Ryan, he's super busy, but I'm happy to do that if you want to send them to me or send them to Rishi. I'm just looking at the chat. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Next week also is the week before Thanksgiving, right, Rishi?
Yep, I
So in
believe
honor
so.
of that, we got food and wine. We're going to have an organic wine, Cal founder, in combination with a gentleman who does alt meats. My understanding is that he grows pork from pork cells. So as we go into Thanksgiving, you'll hear that. And we will not have class the week of Thanksgiving. And then our closing speaker will be Dave Gilboa of Warby Parker Glasses. I'm realizing I'm not on video, so I was doing glasses. So happy to take any questions from anybody. Hope everybody can see the code, Petersen, P-E-T-E-R-S-E-N.
Right. And then I guess, Vicky, when should we make an announcement about the final assignment coming up?
Oh, that is such a great question. So the intent of the final assignment is that everybody kind of thinks about the different speakers you've heard from and what kind of an impact they might have had. It is not to write a 2 or 3 page paper, and I read every single one. So my preference is that you write 1 good paragraph or even 1 good page, double spaced, as opposed to more than that. We'll send the prompt out. I think it might be a good idea, Rishi, to send it out in the next couple of days so people can think about it over Thanksgiving, but it is not due until the week after our closing speaker, which is Dave Gilboa of Warby Parker. So you may want to wait to see what he has to say as both a Cal grad and a founder of a consumer company that maybe you all are aware of.
Right. So I think on B course, you actually can see the final assignment. We're not accepting any submissions as of right now. So I think should we at least start thinking about, speakers that you really resonated with. It's nothing like, too pressing, and just like be genuine and just really kind of take a few minutes to really think about it. And you might have kind of fun with it. So that's kind of, the biggest takeaway so far.
Thanks. I know everybody is slowly getting off. I wish everybody a good night. Thank you for bearing with us. Thanks for being with us last week. And we're looking forward to next Tuesday as well. Thank you, Rishi. Thank you, Daniel, for your introduction.